Thank you for joining us for the midweek message. We're looking at the book of Ezra. We're looking at the people of Israel as they come back out of Babylon, back to Jerusalem, back to Judea. And so as you look at the travels they take, they come back in waves. What we're looking at in Ezra is the wave that came back with Ezra himself. And in chapter 8, where we're going to be today, it's Ezra taking this trip. There are a couple of things that I want to pick up on. Is first of all, the number of people. Second of all, the leaders who came. And then third, I want you to see that how God took care of them, how God provided and took care of their trip. So before we go too far, I want to just say thank you for watching this, and I pray this is a blessing for you today. So Ezra chapter 8, we're just going to read verse 1 to begin with. Listen to this. These are the heads of their fathers' houses, and this is the genealogy of those who went up with me from Babylon in the reign of King Artaxerxes. Now, what he's talking about here is this is the group of people, and I'm not going to go through and read verses 2 through 14, because it lays out those families' names, and I would butcher those terribly. But what, for our purposes, we need to know is this. 1,500 people gather together at the edge of a river. The river is the Ahava River, and it's actually a tributary of the Euphrates. They gather there to take head count, to take a roll call. And so basically 1,500 men plus their families have joined Ezra to take this trip to Jerusalem to rebuild the things that are there. And so Ezra's very excited. Here he's got the support of the Persian king, who wrote the letter last time that we talked about, who made sure that he has the provisions that he needs, a great amount of money, encouragement for the people to go. I mean, he has all the support he could stand. And now they're taking the trip to go to Jerusalem. So in verse 15, something interesting is noticed. In 2 through 14, it talks about all the families that are coming, all those 1,500 men that are gathered there. In verse 15, it tells us something interesting. It says in this, "Now I gathered them by the river that flows to Ahava, and we were camped there 3 days. And I looked among the people and the priest, and found none of the sons of Levi there." In other words, he gathers there, they've encouraged everyone to come, but the priests of the temple have become so comfortable in Babylon that they're not making the trip. They didn't show up to take the trip. And so what does Ezra do in response? He sends a group of men to go back to Babylon, make a plea to these families that isn't there someone that would take the trip with us? Isn't there someone from the house of Levi who they're going to need to be priest in this new temple? Isn't there someone that would go with us, take this trip? It's interesting to me how sometimes God's people become so comfortable in a foreign land that we don't always recognize the need to serve God, to go back to where God is. Sometimes as Christians, we've got to be careful about that. We become so comfortable in our state that we don't take that step out when God gives us a new opportunity, a new chance, a new opportunity to grow. Often we say, "Oh, now I'm kind of busy right now. I've got a lot going on." You can just imagine all the excuses that they would have come up with. And here the priests are the ones that are probably most needed in this campaign. Well, after they sent out the group of men to go back and make a plea to the families, 300 of the Levite priests and the priests that are needed in the temple showed up and began to take the trip with them. So the second plea, I guess, was what they really needed to know that they were wanted on the trip. The third thing we're going to see here is the preparations at the riverside just before they leave on the trip. One of the most powerful moments in Ezra's ministry takes place here by this riverside with this 1,800 men plus women and children here by the riverside. This group begins to fast and proclaim the Lord in prayer. In verse 21 it says this, "Then I proclaimed a fast there at the river Ahava, that we might humble ourselves before our God, to seek from Him the right way for us and our little ones and all our possessions. For I was ashamed to request of the king an escort of soldiers and horsemen to help us against the enemy on the road, because we had spoken to the king, saying, the hand of our God is upon all those for good who seek him, but his power and his wrath are against all those who forsake him. So we fasted and entreated our God for this, and he answered our prayer. What an incredible, powerful moment. And he tells you the thinking behind it. He said before they took the trip, they knew that they would encounter enemies. They knew that there would be thieves on the road. I mean, they are a large group, but they're not a huge group. And a group this size traveling, other people would have heard they were coming, and they would have also heard about the money they were carrying. And so you can just imagine the threat they would be under. And Ezra said he didn't want to go back to the king and ask for a horseman and an army to give them security. He had already told the king that God was going to protect them. And so as such, they needed to seek the God's protection. So what did they do in regards to that? They fasted and prayed. What a difference it makes when God's people fast and pray. They seek his protection, his face. And I love what Ezra said before he ever leaves. He says, and he answered our prayer. They gained confidence in knowing that God was going to go with us. God gave them a peace about this trip. So they begin to take this trip. He appoints 12 leaders to be over the gold and silver. And in verse 24 it said, and I separated 12 of the leaders of the priest, Sherebiah and Hashabiah, and 10 of their brethren with them. So what he does is he pulls out 12 leaders and said, look, we have a lot of gold and silver, a lot of money. I need for you to watch over this, to take care of this on the trip. Literally, they're taking millions of dollars in gold and silver on this trip. They're going to go back and rebuild. They need millions of dollars to do it. And in that day and age, millions of dollars would have been an incredible sum of money. It would have been, I'm sure, in the billions and billions of dollars today. So they appointed 12 men to oversee the carrying of that money until they got to Jerusalem. They were responsible so that when they arrived at Jerusalem, all that money would be accounted for. Now, they make the trip and they arrive at Jerusalem, and in verse 31 we hear about the trip. It says, then we departed from the river Ahava on the 12th day of the first month to go to Jerusalem. And the hand of our God was upon us, and he delivered us from the hand of the enemy and from ambush along the road. So we came to Jerusalem and stayed there 3 days. Now on the 4th day the silver and gold and the articles were weighed in the house of our God by the hand of Meremoth, the son of Uriah, the priest. And with him was Eleazar, the son of Phinehas. With them were the Levites, Jozabad, the son of Jeshua, and Noadiah, the son of Binnui. In the number and weight of everything, all the weight was written down at that time. The children of those who had been carried away captive, who had come from the captivity, offered burnt offerings to the Lord God of Israel. 12 bulls for all of Israel, 96 rams, 77 lambs, and 12 male goats as a sin offering. All this was a burnt offering to the Lord. And they delivered the king's orders to the king's satraps and the governors in the region beyond the river. So they gave support to the people and the house of God. You can imagine the group of people coming into Jerusalem and how inspiring that would have been to the people who've been in Jerusalem now for multiple generations. The city is being taken care of, but it's not really been totally rebuilt. And you're not seeing all the temple functioning as it should. And all these things are in some sort of disarray. And Ezra comes, and what Ezra brings with him, more important than the money, is revival. There's a revival among the people. There's an excitement for the things of God among the people. They are excited about the infusion that God has poured out among the people of God there in Jerusalem. I want to tell you, in our own lives, When God calls us to a trip, number one, let us not be so satisfied in the state that we are that we're afraid to go and do what God's calling us to do. Number two, know that God's going to provide. And we need to trust in that. But we also need to go to Him in prayer and fasting and make sure that He knows that He is the one we are trusting for all things: safety, money, security, and peace. And then, when we take the trip, let us make sure we do it with honesty. Every bit of the gold and silver was accounted for when they arrived there in Jerusalem. All of it went into the temple, and all of it was accounted for. And then finally, I want you to see, when you take these kind of trips, when you step out and do something great for God that He's calling you to do, it brings about revival not only in your own life, but in the lives of other people who see it. So never be afraid to go. If you get the chance to do something for God, take that trip and see how God uses you in the people around you to make a difference in their lives. Thank you for watching. Have a great week.